Welcome to episode 106 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. It's February 14, 1953. We're at Deepdale, Preston North End versus Sheffield Wednesday, First Division, a proper winter afternoon with heavy ground, hard tackles and no safety net, because in 1953 there are no substitutes. If you go down, your team goes down to 10. And today is one of those football history days where the match becomes a footnote, because what happens to one player becomes a life story. His name is Derek Dooley, 23 years old, a centre forward built like a battering ram, a goal scorer so prolific that Sheffield had already started to treat him like a local phenomenon. By the end of this match, his right leg will be broken. Within days, that leg will be amputated. And the story that follows will turn him into something rare in English football, a legend in two rival clubs in a divided city. But how did we get here? Post-war English football is booming in crowds, but not in comfort. The maximum wage is still strangling players. Pitches are brutal. Medical care is basic. Player welfare is not yet a phrase anyone really uses. The game expects you to get on with it. Preston are one of the country's best sides. They're chasing the title, driven by Tom Finney, the one-club genius, the local hero, the man who can turn a touchline into a stage. Sheffield Wednesday are newly back in the top flight, and their symbol is Derek Dooley. Dooley is an old-school number 9, the kind who lives in the 6-yard box, who attacks crosses like they're personal insults, who makes goalkeepers feel like every loose ball is an invitation to chaos. And that's where the controversial part comes in, because Dooley isn't just scoring, he's charging, he's clattering, he's leaning into the law, into the grey area, into the psychological part. Some crowds boo him, some goalkeepers hate him, but Wednesday supporters adore him because he's theirs, and he's scoring at a rate that feels unreal. And then comes February 14, 1953, Preston versus Wednesday, Deepdale. Title pressure on one side, survival pride on the other. The match is tight, it's tense, it's goalless late on. And at some point, a ball is played through, a chase into the danger zone. Dooley goes for it the way he always goes for it, full commitment, full momentum, centre forward's tunnel vision. Preston's goalkeeper, George Thompson, comes out. They collide. It's a kind of collision that, in the stadium, people register as nasty, and then the game moves on. Except this one doesn't. Dooley's right leg is fractured, badly, a double fracture, so he's carried off. And because this is 1953, that's not just an injury, that's a tactical disaster. Wednesday are down to 10 men. The match resets around absence. And 8 minutes from time, Preston finally break it. Tom Finney scores. Preston win 1-0 and stay on top of the table. And that would normally be the story, except now the real story moves away from the pitch to Preston Royal Infirmary. At first it looks like football bad luck, a break, a cast, then time and rehab. But the doctors start to worry. Something is wrong with circulation, with sensation, with the leg itself. A small scratch, something that might not even be noticed in everyday life, has become the doorway for something far more dangerous, infection, and not the kind you shake off. Gas gangrene. Suddenly it's no longer about saving a footballer's season, it's about saving a young man's life. There's urgency. Anti-gangrene serum is needed fast. There are police cars involved. And there's the feeling, in the reporting, of a community watching a match, injury, turn into a medical emergency. And then the decision no footballer ever expects to hear: amputate. Dooley's right leg is removed above the knee. He's in critical condition. The language around him is stark, life or death. It's hard to land, even now, but imagine it in 1953 when this is a Saturday footballer in a packed league season, and by Tuesday, the headlines are about whether he will survive. And he does. He survives the infection, he survives the operation, and he survives the psychological shock of waking up and realizing that football has taken something permanent. Now, here's where many stories end. Injury-ended career, a tragic what if. But Derek Dooley's story does not end. It changes. The first chapter is grief, and then grit. He becomes, for Wednesday, a symbol of loss and love. The club is shaken, the supporters are shaken, the team, without him, fades, and the season that felt like a rival turns into a slog. Of the remaining 12 matches in the season, they win merely 3. And Preston? They keep winning, but the title race becomes one of the closest in English history. Preston finish level on points with Arsenal, and lose the league on goal average. Not goal difference, goal average. A decimal point cruelty a reminder of how thin the margins are in this sport. So that's what happened to the clubs. But what happens to the man? Dooley refuses to disappear. He lives into his city, into his football, into the work. He becomes a figure around the club, the kind supporters point to with pride. There's Derek Dooley, the man with 65 goals in 65 appearances, until that fateful moment on this day in 1953. There's a moment later, a testimonial match, a football community doing what it does best, turning up, paying in, saying you're one of ours. And then, years pass, and the game changes, and Dooley changes with it. By the early 1970s, he's not just a memory, he's in leadership. He becomes Sheffield Wednesday's manager. And the irony is, the man whose career was ended by violence and bad luck becomes a preacher of attacking football. He tries to make Wednesday play with courage. He has success, and then comes the other side of football: politics, sports, timing, bitterness. He dismissed it in controversial fashion. He takes it hard. He stays away for years. And then comes the twist that makes this story so uniquely Sheffield, because the next chapter of Derek Dooley's football life is Sheffield United, the other club, the city rival, the other half of town. And there too, he becomes a leader, a director, a figure of authority, a football man trusted to help shape a club. So yes, he becomes something almost impossible in a divided city. He becomes a respected symbol in both red and white, and blue and white. And that's the real legacy. Not just the goals, not just the tragedy, but the refusal to leave the game, and the ability somehow to be embraced by both sides of Sheffield. So what? Dooley's story sits inside the long, uncomfortable history of football and risk. We love the sport because it feels like theatre, but it has always had a violent edge, especially in eras when medical care was slower, protections fewer, and rules still evolving. Earlier generations had even darker moments: deaths from collisions, from kicks, and from the game's old brutality. The sport learned, slowly, and usually after something awful forced a lesson. This is also the part of the story of player welfare. In 1953, if you're injured badly, the game continues. Your team plays short, the medical response is limited, and the margin for infection is terrifyingly thin. Over the decades, football layers in the things we now take for granted: substitutes, specialized medical teams, faster emergency response, better surgical outcomes, better rehab, stronger unions, better insurance, and increasingly protocols that treat the athlete as a human being first. Dooley is one of the stories that make you understand why those changes mattered. And then there's the human so what, because for every tragedy in football history, there's a fork in the road. One path is disappearance, a player becomes a cautionary tale. The other path is what Derek Dooley chose, a second career in the same world that hurt him, and not as a victim, but as a leader. And if you want a final image to hold on to, it's this: a centre forward who once terrified goalkeepers ended up uniting a city that prides itself on never agreeing about anything. 3 things to take away from February 14, 1953. First, football can change your life in one collision, and not always in the ways the match report records. And second, the history of player safety written in moments the sport wishes it didn't have, and Dooley is one of the clearest. And third, legends aren't only made by what you do on the pitch, sometimes they're made by what you refuse to leave behind. On this day in 1953, Derek Dooley went to Deepdale chasing a ball, and began a story that would make him bigger than either side of Sheffield. That's all for episode 106 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. If you enjoyed this story, follow the show, rate it, and share it with a football friend. Find us on LinkedIn, and for story suggestions, corrections, or leads, email me at otd@17lawsguy.com. Tomorrow, episode 107, February 15, 1998, El Tris Trifecta. See you then.